Today on the Mr. Maple Show podcast, Matt and Tim talk to nursery legend and maple expert Cor van Gelderen.
Cor van Gelderen, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. We do a weekly podcast where we talk to some of our favorite people. And, you know, we like to think of ourselves as kind of maple experts, but you know what? We have superheroes too. And so when we go to see our heroes, I got to say, Cor van Gelderen is one of the guys at the top of the list for maple knowledge in the entire world. When I go to geek out and learn new things, this is one of the guys I go to.
Yeah, I mean, for me, if there's one person, if there's one of the top people in the world on maples, it's Cor van Gelderen. I'm super excited to have him on the podcast today. Cor van Gelderen is from a legacy of nurserymen at Esveld Nursery, and they've been on the forefront of Japanese maples for years.
Cor, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And I always like an interview to sort of start with compliments like you just did.
That's true.
Come on, guys, go on.
Right, it is completely true. Whenever the Maple Society, and it's been a minute since we've got to hang out, but whenever the Maple Society is doing a tour or any tours going on, and Cor will grab his camera and sometimes go in a different direction than the tour, that's the tour I want to be on. I'm going where he's going. I'm studying what he's doing. I'm talking to him about what he's doing because it's way better than anything else that's happening. So
I know when we were going through gardens in New Jersey, like Ed Shin's garden that I've been through before, I decided to walk around with Cor van Gelderen because, you know, that's where I learn stuff. That's where I really enjoy, you know, hearing what Cor has to say about Japanese maples.
So, Cor, we certainly know, but for our listeners, what's the name of your nursery, and where are you coming from today?
Yeah, the name of my nursery is Esveld in Holland. And that's not Holland, Michigan, but Holland in Europe. And it's named Esveld, and my surname is different. It's Van Gelderen because my father cleverly married that Esveld girl who was the former owner of the nursery. Because the nursery has been in our family for 5 generations now, since the 1860s. So quite some time, over 165 years now, which is really, really long.
That's just incredible. I know when I got to go there, you were telling stories of Siebold visiting the nursery, and it's like it's truly a piece of Japanese maple history, plant history, and it was just an honor to get to go there. That was one of my favorite memories. It was an early thing for me, getting to go visit. I think it might have been 2010 or 2011, maybe 2011, when that Maple Society meeting came to Esveld. I think it was 2011, and that was a special time for sure.
I know I was jealous because I was still in college.
It was great. I can still remember your visit quite well, actually, because you were so enthusiastic, and I really like that because the fun thing about plants is that you get to meet interesting people who are just as enthusiastic about plants as you are yourself. And so it was a great time then. And I can remember standing at the Siebold introduction of the Golden Full Moon Maple,
right,
which is from the 1860s, early 1860s. And you were really enthusiastic about it. And actually, so am I. It's a great plant, and it tells a lot about the history of our nursery, that it's there. And it's the oldest Golden Full Moon maple in the world now, because even in Japan, there's not an older one.
I'm such a plant nerd, but I'm also a history major from college. So to see things like that, I mean, it's just real history. You know, that's so cool to me. That was a fascinating story. And that whole nursery, oh my gosh, the history, the legacy, it was just such an interesting thing to get to tour. It was one of those special moments for me, for sure. I'd cracked up because you said, if you steal something, I can't be too mad at you, because Siebold stole this and threw it onto our banks. And so it was just a fun tour. We'll have to come back and visit again one day with a film crew, because we would love to video your place. One of the biggest collections of many different genre, but definitely the biggest collections of maples in the world there at Esveld Plantinum.
although you're trying to compete with me, which is great, I think.
I try to give you a good run for it. We're hoarders. Is really what it comes.
Quite extensive as well, isn't it? Now, I think we have about 1,100 or 1,200 different Japanese maples at the moment. I'm not quite sure. I lost a bit of count, but something like that. And although it's great fun collecting them, it's even greater fun sharing them with people like yourself, because the biggest threat of a rare maple is that you're the only one having it. So you always want to spread it around, give it to other people, give it to other enthusiastic plant lovers, so that it's safe in various locations.
I couldn't agree more. And we were just so encouraged by that meeting. And I'll tell you that really bolstered my confidence in what I'm doing. And it really, your mentorship and getting to talk to you then and go around, that was a big deal to me, especially early on. I'd been doing this since 2008, so only full-time about 3 years. I mean, my dad did this as a hobby, so it was just certainly a small business for him on the side. But I was 3 years into doing this full-time, and getting to meet y'all and go to your place, it was just something special I'll never forget.
Now, Cor, your family has been in Japanese maples for quite a while. Your dad was quite famous for maples, DM Van Gelderen. Do you want to talk a little bit about his legacy and sort of what he did with Esveld?
Yeah, I sure will. And I have to start with a sort of a bit of a sad story. You must realize he had been writing on Maples of the World, better known as Mo, amongst maple lovers, for about 16 or 17 years. And when it was finally published at Timber Press in Oregon, I can't quite remember which year it was, probably something like 1984, something like that. I'm not sure. And when it was first published and the first actual books arrived at our place, he was really proud. He had been working on it for a really long time. And the only comment I had was, "Oh, there are not so many pictures in it, are there?" And many people would have been at least disappointed, but more likely even a bit angry with a sort of superfluous and rather unpleasant comment. But the only thing my father said was, "Okay, then let's write a book together with a lot of pictures." And that's what we did, Maples for Gardens, which is a bit of an addendum to the Maples of the World, actually. And with more sort of interest in the Japanese maples, because Maples of the World is about all the maples. Mm-hmm. And my father, he was a really, really keen plantsman, but he wasn't all that interested in all those Japanese maple cultivars. He was more interested in the species, like all scientific people are. And my father's true passion was about plants in nature, the way how to grow there, how you could use them in culture as well. But he was not really all that interested in all those garden plants. He was more a nature lover. So that was his major focus. So when we started working on a book with more pictures, as he asked me to help him with, we started collecting Japanese maples in a bit more extensive way than he did beforehand. Because if you want to write a book about it, you have to know them. And if you want to get to know them, you have to have them. You can't always travel around and go look at them at different places, although that's very helpful as well. But it's even more helpful when you can look at them every day and study them more closely. And that's what we did. And I really love to work with him together on Maples for Gardens, because it was such fun. Having a project like this together with your father, what could be more fun? Oh yeah, and it brought us together. We spent a lot of time traveling around, visiting other maple collections, and collecting ourselves, broadening our view on Japanese maples in general. So it was great fun. It was fun doing that.
Still two of the best books out there on Japanese maples, period. I highly recommend our listeners pick those up. Excellent books.
We have both here at MrMaple, and I've read through them extensively. I know that Maples of the World is often one of my go-tos in trying to figure out, what's in section Palmetto, what can be grafted on to section, Japanese maples. I often pull that out and I'm like, okay, here's a rare species I just ran into. Can this be, what do I think this could be grafted on based on?
I can literally see
how
two
closely
copies
related
from here where we've been using them recently.
And Maples of the World's right over there. So.
Yeah.
And Maples for Gardens right over there too. So,
excellent books, guys. And I had the honor of getting to meet your father. And one of my favorite pictures from that one meeting was Peter Gregory and Piet de Jong were walking by. I think I'm probably like 26. And so I got a picture with DM Van Gelderen, Peter Gregory, and Piet de Jong. I'm like, I still to this day say, like, here's 5 books and me right here. So legends right there.
I like Peter Gregory's book, the Japanese Maple. I think it's the 3rd edition of the J.D. original J.D. Vertrees book. I like that a lot as well because Peter Gregory, a dear friend, unfortunately passed away now.
Yeah,
but he made a brilliant version of the original Vertrees book as well.
I was just such a moment to see him and your father talking. I thought, like, wow, this is cool. I've got to ask both these guys for a picture. It's like 2 rock stars, It's like 2 of the Mount Rushmore guys right here together. I've got to get a picture with both of them, and that was special. So, really cool place, though. How many cultivars would you say? Maybe this is too broad of a question. I was going to ask you how many cultivars Esveld's introduced, but with so many generations, going back to Arium, how many cultivars do you think you've introduced? First off, like I know you have a whole litany of great cultivars in your collection.
I'm not quite sure. You a bit of surprised me with this question, but it must be probably around 20 or 25, something like that. Not all that many, really. If you know how long we've been doing this. But then again, having said that, we've always been rather critical when we sort of trial a new maple. And one of the major questions we always ask ourselves, can you recognize it from 5 meters distance? If you can't recognize it from 5 meters distance, just don't bother introducing it. Because there are already so many cultivars around. It has to really add something to the already very wide range of Japanese maple cultivars there is. Or it has to have a special feature that might not be easily distinguishable by looking at it, but might be an advantage for growing it. For example, Firecracker looks like a bit of a average red dissectum, red Photis dissectum, but it grows about twice the speed as the average red dissectum does. If you compare it to garnet, for example, it's so much quicker. It's so much faster growing. That's an advantage for nursery people. It's not an advantage specifically for gardeners, but it is for nursery people. So, but on the whole, I'd say our major criterion for introducing a new one is recognizability. And that's something sometimes lacks with many new introductions, I think.
Oh, I completely agree. I hate to catch you off guard with that. One of the reasons I was thinking about that is I'm reminiscing on my trip, and I remember meeting many members of your family who have very famous trees named after them. So as I walk through there, I'm like, hey, I got your tree. What's your name? I know you. I got your tree. And so there's so many classics from y'all's nursery. So just so many amazing ones.
Yeah, it's not for nothing that I have 6 children, and they all have double names.
So do you keep having kids to come up with new tree names, or keep having new tree names for kids?
No, I'm too old for that now.
Cor, would you mind telling us about each of your kids and the trees that you've named after them?
So each of them, that will be a bit of. They haven't not all got Japanese maples named after them, but my eldest daughter, she's called Carmen Rosalie, and those are two Acer Davidii selections. Acer Davidii, a snakebark from China, was fairly unknown when we started growing them, and we got a whole bunch of seeds from China, and we grew them, and we had hundreds, maybe thousands of seedlings, and they were all slightly different. And there were two of these seedlings that really stuck out. Were really different from the rest. Carmen, the one that we named Carmen, leafed out chocolate brown in spring, turning green after a fortnight, and a brilliant orange in the autumn. So that was interesting, because we never seen one that budded out chocolate brown in spring. So we named it after my daughter. And the second one was much smaller sized foliage, a much denser growth than the average Acer Davidii, and that's called Rosalie. So that's my first daughter. We never named any Japanese maples after her, only this Chinese one. And then came Myrte Jasmin. She also got a double name. Myrte is a Japanese maple, a palmatum seedling, a chance seedling actually, and we don't even know the mother plant, because we just collected seeds in our collection garden, and we use them for rootstock. And we had, say, 10,000 seedlings for grafting upon. And when you do that, you have them in your hands in the autumn, every single plant, every single one of them. And what we used to do then is that we would say set aside 20 or 30 plants each year out of these 10,000 seedlings and observe them for a couple of years. And if we, after 4 or 5 years, still thought they were worth keeping, we would name them. And Myrte was selected because, again, brown, really brown in spring, turning an olive green in summer, and that's when we selected it for this peculiar olive green color, and again a brilliant orange autumn color, at least in our climate. In a more continental climate, it would sort of probably turn red rather than orange, but in our sea climate, it's always a lovely orange. And Jasmin was a chance seedling of Acer cerassoenum palmatifolium crossed with Acer palmatum bloodgood. The same parentage as Trompenberg, actually, or Gloria. But this one we named after my second daughter, Jasmin. What makes it stick out of many of the other red-foliaged, upright growing Japanese maples is that the fruits are upright, as in cerassoenum is common, instead of drooping, as in which is a feature for Acer palmatum. So that's my second daughter. My third daughter, she turned into a hamamelis, I'm afraid, and not into a Japanese maple. And then came my fourth daughter, Felice Renée, and she is a Japanese maple again, from the Dissectum group, a very obscure one, really. You'll hardly ever see it in commerce anymore, because it hardly grows. She's very slow growing. But she has a very, it's a very different palette of colors, with oranges and lime greens and bright greens in it. Really different from any other Dissectum, I think, but pretty hard to propagate. She's a bit of a pain in the ass. And I'm not talking about my daughter now.
Beautiful tree. We love that plant. I've tried to offer. I love the reticulation it gets in it. One of the few lace leaves with that kind of reticulated veining. It's really, I quite like it, but it's never gained any popularity. And we never named one Renee. We just didn't do that. And then I've got my first son, and he's called Nathan Oscar. Now, Oscar, we didn't use that name, but we did use the name Nathan, because Nathan, and that's one of the reticulatum group. Mm-hmm. Not very distinct, not like the ones that were introduced like by Tellenbuckels, for example, bit more relaxed in its coloring, but still a lovely
fiery red in spring, and staying a light red in summer. And the autumn color is not really something spectacular, just a good red one.
Oh, I think you're underselling it. I love that plant. I think it is one of the showstoppers of the reticulatum group for me. I love the multi-tone you can kind of get in there. Red's nice, but you can get some yellows and some oranges here in the spring. It's almost like a full sunset in that thing sometimes. I love Nathan. Yeah. I'm a big fan of that one.
Thank you, because I quite like it, because I think many of the red upright growing palmatums are too dark, too dark a color, and can be a bit dull. Especially later in summer. And I quite like Nathan because it stays a bright and vivid red all during the year. And especially in spring, I quite like it. I think it's quite nice. But I don't want to be too generous about it, because he might hear this podcast as well. And then is my last son, and he's called Ruben. Now, Ruben, you'll know Ruben.
Oh, yeah.
That's one from the Corallinum group. And it's actually a seedling from Corallinum. But we selected it because it was so much happier and more vigorous and healthy than the average Corallinum. And I quite like it still. It's still a good selection. It's a bit lighter in its coloring than Corallinum. It's a more pink, a sort of silvery pink. And this is a Finnish story. They have a garden in the west of Holland called the Kukenhof, which is planted with millions of bulbs. And I was asked to design a Japanese garden for them. So I did. And I planted a group of Acephalmatum Ruben in it on a bed of moss. And it was really lovely in spring with this silvery pink group of Japanese maples. And I was really proud of this garden. It's almost a hectare for a Japanese garden. It's fairly big. And the Keukenhof attracts about 1 million visitors a year. So I was really proud of this commission. So I went there with my children and my wife. And the only thing my son said, "Oh, it's a bit gay, this one, isn't it?"
I love it. I love the spread. I love the kind of spreading habit it gets. It's a very popular one for us. Of course, that's what your younger son's going to say. That
he was 40, mind you.
Yeah, right.
He's happy with it now.
That's funny. It's kind of it's a unique in its shape too. I wouldn't consider it like pendulous, but like maybe semi-pendulous and spreading. Because it kind of makes a more unique shape than something like Corallinum. You get these kind of mounding effects.
Some lateral branching with it, for sure.
Yeah.
I love it. It's very popular.
And the last one is Misha, because my youngest son is Misha Ruben. And Misha, I was hoping to find the red Cyril. I was really desperately trying to find the red Cyril. And I thought I had it. I didn't. But still, Misha is quite a nice one. And quite a fast-growing one. Not unlike Firecracker. Those are two sister seedlings, Firecracker and Misha. They're quite alike. I should have named one, but I named two. But yeah, then again, shit happens. Sometimes you make a mistake.
What a cool collection, though. I think some of the best plants ever introduced come from your nursery. I'm a huge fan of them. Tim didn't understand what a big undertaking it would be to ask somebody about their introductions when they have 6 kids with a lot of double names. That makes you give a whole dissertation there. That was a bit of a speech. I'm like, dang, Tim, that might be more than you think. You mentioned on something there that I thought was really interesting. And you were talking about with Yasmin, we were walking around, I believe it was Arboretum Calmute, or I think it was Calmute, where the palmatifolium is there in the ground. And
there's the original introduction of palmatifolium there.
Yeah, I mentioned like loving your tour better than the regular tour. I was on the Cor van Gelderen tour with just me and you when I took off to follow you. And you said this is the original Acer Shirosalon palmatifolium that Trompenberg was found as a seedling under. And I always thought that was so fascinating. We often list that as, having some Shirosalon influence to it. And I think it's just so interesting, those lineages and things like that. that just fascinated me, and it's certainly something we've always tried to continue letting people know that had some of that Shirosawa full moon lineage, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I'm quite fascinated by that as well. And you have to realize that this whole plant world in Europe is quite connected. The Comtout Arboretum, where we saw this Shirosawa palmatifolium, the family, the Belder, who owned the Arboretum, they were good friends of my parents. And Trompenberg Arboretum, after which the Asa Trompenberg is named, that was owned by the family of Van Huy Smit, quite a wealthy Dutch family. And then again, they were also very close friends to my parents. So if you have this three families together, you find the heritage of Jasmine, of Trompenberg, of Green Trompenberg, and of many other Japanese maples and other plants, for that matter. Especially when you talk about the Belder family, they're famous for their hamamelis, their witch hazels, and their hydrangea paniculatas. They have introduced quite a number of really good hydrangea paniculatas in the 1980s and 1970s. But those families of really keen plants people, they all knew each other.
Yeah,
they were friends, plant friends, and that's what I like about this plant world a lot. That you get into contact with really interesting people all over the world, and there don't seem to be any borders. One of my more snobbish stories is that I was visiting a garden in England, in the Cotswolds, trying to advise the owner of the garden on his Japanese maples, and the owner is now King Charles. He was Prince Charles at the time.
Wow.
But I never would have met him if it were not for our shared love for plants.
Right.
Being just an ordinary nurseryman from Holland. So it opens doors which otherwise would have stayed shut. And when I was sitting at the kitchen table in his house in the Cotswolds, or should I say his castle in the Cotswolds,
Wow.
Chatting about plants and having a good time, forgetting the difference in background completely, because we were having fun talking about plants. And that's a great thing, I think.
Was he still is, but was he a bit of a maple collector from what I hear? I think he had a pretty good maple collection.
Yeah, he most certainly was. The reason I was invited, they had a plant in his collection garden, in his glades, of which he wanted to plant it more, but they had lost their name. And they first went to the Westerberg Arboretum, which is the neighboring garden, actually. And Peter Gregory didn't know which one it was. So they asked me to come over to help them. And what they did, we went into the garden. It's a bit of a funny story. We went into the garden and we went to an Aesopalmatum shishigashira. And I said, yeah, this is shishigashira. I was wondering why Peter wouldn't have recognized it. I thought it was a bit strange because it's so easy to recognize. And then we went to the next one. I said, yes, this could be Tamikuyama, but I'm not quite sure whether it's Tamikuyama because there are some really similar ones. So I'm a bit doubtful, but Tamikuyama would be my best guess. And then we went to the next one. And again, this was quite an easy one to recognize. And after, say, about 10 plants, I was there with the head gardener. She said, yes, these were the plants that we knew what they were, and you had them all correct. Now we go to the one that we don't know.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Putting you through the test.
It was a bit cheeky, wasn't it?
Yeah. Sorry, you got to pass the royal test here before you're allowed to identify anymore.
They were testing your acumen. Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
I thought it was fun. And then we went to this plant, and I wasn't quite sure because it was the wrong time of the year. And I thought, I got you there. So I said, sorry, I'm not quite sure. It could be this, it could be that. It's hard to tell in this time of the year. I think I should come back in spring to have another look.
That's a good plan. Yeah, it's hard in late summer, especially. There's so many things that are similar. I always tell people we'll give you an educated guess. That's our best.
Yeah.
We're not, don't put it down as a fact, but we'll give you an educated guess and as good as we can. But yeah, use that for another trip back to the Royal Gardens there. Why not, man? We're going to have to get here in fall and spring. I'm going to need to get cuttings off this thing. We really got to study it.
But it's a lovely garden, and he is really a very keen plantsman. And I sometimes have the feeling that it was not without reason that it took him so long to become king, because he actually loved gardening probably more than being a royalty. Nice.
That's good quality.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, one introduction I didn't hear you say that I thought was one of your relatives was Acer palmatum Ariadne.
Oh yeah, sorry. You're quite right. Thank you for helping me. Yeah, Ariadne is the second name of my third daughter. That's Ariadne. Vesna, her first name, we use for a Hamamelis, and Ariadne was indeed used for a maple, also from the reticulatum group, but with a bit more deeply divided leaves than the average, and a reddish undertone. Quite an attractive one, actually. And one of the first reticulators to be introduced, because nowadays this is quite a popular group, and there are many of this group introduced, especially by the Buchholz and Buchholz. But at those days, I think it has been introduced, say, in what will it be 1990. There weren't so many. There were very few from the reticulatum group, and that was really distinct.
Oh, I think it's still quite distinctive. That's another one I think is super next level. I know I could see Tim's brain thinking, he's like, I didn't hear him say that. I better change the description. So I better ask, or I'm going to have to change the website.
I know for a fact that it was one of your daughters, because I'd asked you on one of the maple study trips, because I'd written in our description that Ariadne was the Greek goddess of the maize, and you're going to get lost in all the reticulated veins, and then you're like, oh, that's my daughter. So I was like,
nope, I just made all that up then.
I was like, did I mess that up? Was it his wife? I was trying to figure out exactly, where I messed that up. But Ariadne, that's an awesome plant. Is it in the same, was it found as a chance seedling from something similar to Nathan? Because, it has some of those similar leaf morphology.
Yeah, it's an Akashikita Sasawa seedling.
Interesting.
A lot of intricate leafing. Like it's got a lot of serrations around the leaf for sure. I think it's really next level.
Our Akashikita Sasawa was next to a dissectum, so it must have crossed with a dissectum, which gives it the peculiar leaf shape for one of the plants in the reticulatum group. Having said that, I'm not sure whether this is true, because officially, in my view, Acer palmatum should be divided in three different species: Immunum, Matsumure, and palmatum, and they don't seem to cross really well. As you know, I've sort of proposed a new naming system for the Japanese maples, which is now slowly being introduced. Yeah, I think with these group names rather than the species names, because it's a bit of a mess. And if we were forced to use the division in Matsumure, Immunum, and palmatum, it would be even worse than just skipping the species name. For example, Acer palmatum Osakazuki, a very well-known one, would then be named Acer Immunum Osakazuki. Right. Or Acer palmatum garnet, again, quite a common one, would be Acer Matsumure garnet. Nobody would be happy with that.
The late Yano-san, very adamant about that as well, those three divisions. And he was doing some genetics testing that proved they were very distinctively different, almost species within themselves too. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, his work.
I think they are three different species, and I even have the strong feeling, if not almost a certainty that they don't hybridize.
His work, whenever they were doing the DNA stuff, he was believing that it was Acer palmatum and then Acer aminum and then Acer aminum variety dissectum.
Yeah.
Or variety matsumuri, subspecies matsumuri, variety dissectum.
And I have the feeling that it's even 3 different species.
Yeah.
So Aminum and Matsumuri are not all that related either. I did a study at some point looking at all the Japanese maple cultivars, and I came to the conclusion that they don't seem to hybridize. And I can give you an easy example to explain that. I think everybody has been looking for a dissectum that buds out in spring bright pink, the color of corallinum or the shoyo. For everybody wants that, and those maples have been in cultivation for 800 years, 900 years.
It's amazing,
and still nobody has found it. Then probably it is not possible. Likely, it's not possible, and the fact that it won't cross, that it won't hybridize, for me, it means they're just different species. They're not the same thing. There are numerous examples of Acer palmatum and Acer circevenum hybridizing, or Acer Sieboldinum and palmatum hybridizing, even Acer circinatum, the American species hybridizing with Acer palmatum. But I can't think of any examples of Acer matsumuri crossing with Acer palmatum.
You gave me a challenge. I'm now going hard at trying to develop a lace leaf with the spring colors of DeSojo or corallinum. Challenge accepted, Cor.
I've been trying this for 45 years.
Good luck, buddy.
I was almost introducing another word in this sentence. No, I've been really trying that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who has been trying that.
That's fascinating stuff. Yeah, that's.
But can you think of an example of one of the Aminum groups? Osaka being saying the most well known of the Aminum group, which is bright pink in spring.
There's a new one out called Pink Panther, and
I think that might actually be some Olivieranum though. Even
it may be an Olivieranum X Aminum hybrid.
It might have some Olivieranum. I don't know. We have to do some genetics testing. It'd have to really be tested to know.
It looks like it's got another species involved for sure, but it's got the spring color and new growth flushes in the summer that is consistently a bright pink.
Now, Talon says that green tea is a seedling from Amber Ghost. Also, kind of looks a little Olivieranum at times, so maybe there's something creeping in there. But that one can have some spring pink. But I don't know that that stands up to corallinum group level pink.
I do agree that Acer palmatum is easily pollinated by Olivieranum, Sieboldinum, Pseudosieboldinum, circinatum, circevenum. They all hybridize, but not with Matsumuri and Aminum.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I can't think of any good examples.
So let me ask you this.
I think they're really separate species.
Let me ask you this. One of the other holy grails has always been a red Cereus. Do you feel that Cereus is in the palmatum group? We've often theorized that maybe it might be because of the smaller seeds, the growth rate,
the rootability.
Yeah, it can root where typically Matsumares do not root. And healthy and happy.
And smaller leaves.
The seeds seem to be more indicative of that of the straight species, like Acer palmatum, subspecies palmatum.
Yeah, it might be in the Matsumuri.
Okay, I always wondered.
But I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's the same with genus dissectum, which I don't think is a dissectum at all. You have genus dissectum in your collection.
I don't think I do. No, I don't think I do.
Oh, there's a palmatum out there which is called genus dissectum, GENE'(S), and I don't think it's a dissectum. So it's a bit of a misleading name. And the same counts for Cereus. I don't think it's a dissectum either. It's not in the dissectum group. Not only because of its strange and peculiar habits, but indeed also because of its seeds. And the same arguments as you just used. you can grow it so easily from cuttings.
Right.
And there's not a single one you can grow from cuttings except for firecracker. Firecracker is a red one that you can grow from cuttings.
Oh, interesting. We joked about Cor being our superhero for this. Whenever we were in Holland, they were trying out some new keys. And so everybody had these keys, and when the keys broke down,
it's to identify different species.
Yeah, but when the keys broke down to identify the species, everybody called on their champion. And I went wherever he was at, because this guy, it didn't matter who. They were like, well, we're calling on this guy to identify. And I'm like, we'll see what Cor says over here. So I always take your word for it. You're one of those guys that when you tell me something, I'm like, let's mark that down, make some notes. That's good stuff, because I know you've thought things out thoroughly. And you have good reason behind all your opinions. So I love it. And that's where I go to study whenever I get to study new things. I was quite excited about the people calling their champions, though. But whenever they call Cor, that was kind of the end of the discussion right there. I was like, he's right. Cor's coming to tell us the real deal. And that's what it is.
Yeah, it's one of these things where it's interesting to see your perspective and hear, what you've been working on for 45 years. Hopefully I've got 45 years left in me to try to finish, to go after some of these projects too, see if they're, build on the work that y'all have started. I mean, you've introduced so many amazing plants throughout the years. I know as soon as I got into maples, we were at tailgate markets, and we were, first book we got was J.D. Veritree's book, and it was, the first and second, the third edition, and we just sit there and read them. And then I got Maples for the World, and my eyes just opened up. I was like,
what he's saying is he studied you before he met you. So when we got to meet you, it was like meeting.
and then I got Maples for Gardens, and I was like, oh my goodness. So whenever we actually got to meet you and have conversations with you, I was just like, this guy knows his stuff. This guy is amazing. We've been corresponding for years through emails, and it was always.
We got to get back over there. You've never made it to Europe yet. We've got to make a trip.
We've got to make it to Europe soon. We're looking at the Maple Society meeting is
moved to 2026.
Moved to 2026.
Mm-hmm.
So that's our plan right now. Is hopefully we'll get across the pond in 2026. And
that would be great. Great seeing you. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll have to, either come before or stay after to really be able to get to visit your nursery too, if it works for you. But
there's so many amazing plants in the ground there at Esveld. How many maples would you guess? I know another off the cuff question, but how many maples would you guess are, in the ground there at that location, just in those gardens? I mean, I was just awestruck walking around. First off, it was my first ever time being in Holland, so that was already really cool. I know we were driving this big tour bus, and when we were going to your nursery, they were doing road construction. So they got the first part of the bus off over the water on one side, and then the back side off. And so he had both the front and the back of the bus over the water, and he said, "Would anybody like to get off?" And I jumped out of that bus and took off straight into your nursery.
Yeah, that was fun indeed. Yeah. No, I'm not sure how many plants we have got in the nursery. I know we have about 1,300, 1,400 different Japanese maples taxa on the nursery. And as being a nursery, we grow them. But we're not that big an operation, really. We're just a small family-run business. So we grow about, say, 12,000, 13,000 maples a year. Something like that, just limited numbers. And of each variety, we make only 5 or 10 plants a year. And so we do it on a really, really small scale. But trying to grow as many different ones as we possibly can. But talking about that, there's always new ones coming up. And these were interesting ones coming up. But it's getting so complicated to exchange with other countries. For example, exchanging plants with you lot, it's become really, really complicated. It used to be quite easy. You could send science and or plants, and nowadays it's a bit of a pain, and it's a pity because that's what I said earlier. If you find something really interesting, you want to spread it around as quickly as you can. I don't know what your opinion is on that, but I find it sort of the isolation in which countries put themselves, and I'm not talking just about the United States, but many countries do that, and Europe does it as well. It's a mistake. Yeah. Plants should be able to freely travel around the world. Because it's an illusion to think that the diseases won't have spread already.
Right.
Every disease possible has already spread. So
it's kind of that old adage that people believe that a lot of the variegations were viral and they were going to bring in diseases. And truly, Japanese maple is one of those sterile plants that are great. Especially, you can get a phyto on one, you know exactly what you're doing, and you can't really go wrong after that. So I agree. It's pretty easy thing to trade if it was allowed, but the restrictions are pretty hard sometimes.
The restrictions are more or less because people didn't. I think people were worried and they don't know, and the fear of the unknown is why people put the restrictions on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just a dangerous way to be, is to be worried about the unknowns in the future. I'm an optimist myself, and I think it's really important to be safe and to make sure that disease and pests aren't spreading. But I mean, these restrictions that they put on through the USDA and many other government agencies across the world just seem to be overkill.
Well, everybody wants what they don't have. So everybody in Europe wants the American cultivars, and everybody in America wants all these European cultivars that we can't get. So all the collectors in America constantly send me pictures and they say, why don't you have this? I'm sorry, it's not in the US.
And the same the other way around.
Right.
The same the other way around. When I go to your website, I always see things, I want to have that one as well. and it's really frustrating that you can't just swap plants like we used to do. We used to swap plants a lot, mm-hmm. and it was never a problem. But now they seem so problematic. And I think that's really a pity. And as I said, it's indeed an illusion. If there were any Japanese maple diseases, specifically for Japanese maples, we would have already swapped them as well. No, I don't think there's any reason to be fearful about it. And indeed, the stupid idea that the variegated plants mm-hmm. are a threat.
Right.
I think it's nonsensical.
Well, we're now growing out at Buckholtz Farm. Tim and I bought Buckholtz Nursery coming up on a year right now. And so if you're in the United States, we'd love to get you over to Buckholtz to see kind of what we're doing out there. We've been kind of beefing things back up to the 2009 kind of size that nursery was. It'd been downsized a little bit, so we're trying to grow things out there. We're trying to focus on a lot of the Flora Wonder collection, so a lot of the plants that Talon was originally growing, but kind of getting those going again. But on our website, we always had the distinction. There were only two things we ever kind of listed on our website. We had like a chart. We need to get it back up and updated, but we had a chart of Buckholtz introductions and Esveld introductions. So we will have to get a complete list from you at some point so we can kind of, put all those in credit and kind of list that, because you guys are right there as one of the greatest introducers of all time. And if there's a Mount Rushmore, it's, y'all are on it. It's the coolest stuff, and generationally, historically, one of the most important maple places ever. So we just thank you for that. And our door is always open if you're in North Carolina or in Oregon. We'll fly over to Oregon if you're out that way and show you around out there.
Just let us know ahead of time so we can get out there.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I would love to come and visit. I'm always a bit cramped for time, but now I'm growing slightly older. I might find more time. I definitely hope so. So you'll certainly see me at some point.
That sounds great. Again, one of our favorite collections ever. I'll have to get down with you at some point and get a definitive Esveld Plantinium cultivar list so we can show that for our customers. So one, they can, I don't know if we even have all of them, but they can at least look through what that is.
Drop me an email about this, because otherwise I'll probably forget to write this to you. But I can easily do that. So drop me an email and I'll send the complete list to you.
Hey, Cor, I appreciate you jumping on today. I mean, we could talk to you for hours about anything. I mean, you're one of the most interesting people for me to actually talk with. And so, I would love to do this, daily. Call and talk to Cor van Gelderen.
so sign up. Yeah, we just got to do this every day now.
I think
work at some point.
Oh, no.
I think you would have to get off to go to work. I mean, I could find ways to make this my fun pastime and sit around and talk about, Esveld Nursery, your trees, and learn as much as I could.
A lot of people know us because we do a daily YouTube channel now. But I truly mean this. When we want to learn from superstars, it's guys. Cor van Gelderen's that guy for me. Like, I love learning from you. I love talking to you. It's always a pleasure and an honor. And hey, we just love what you do. I'm a big fan.
Thanks a lot, guys. It was fun being on your show.
Thanks so much, Cor. We appreciate it.
All right, y'all, take care. God bless.
And have a great day.